Okay, so you guys sent us some pretty interesting stuff on XRP this time.
Yeah, a whole bunch of predictions about where the price might go.
Seriously, from now all the way out to like 2030 and even further.
It's wild, some of those long-term forecasts.
Totally. So we're going to do a deep dive into all of it today.
Exactly. I try to break it down and make some sense of it all.
See what the experts are thinking about Ripple's coin, XRP.
Price predictions are really based on.
Right, and help you figure out if you're interested in crypto.
Yeah, if this is something you should even be paying attention to.
So we've got articles from CoinStats, Coinpedia 3 Commas, Investing Haven.
FlipPay, even some analysis from Oliver Dale on PR Newswire.
That's a good mix. A lot of different perspectives in there.
You've got the technical stuff, chart analysis, all that.
But also like broader opinions from experts in the field.
And a good look at the things everyone thinks will actually move the price.
Yeah, the big factors that could make or break XRP's future.
So we'll distill it all down and give you the key takeaways.
Now, let's be real for a second. Predicting crypto prices is...
Well, it's not exactly an exact science, is it?
It's like, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 5 years from now.
A lot of things can change really quickly in this space.
But by looking at the reasoning behind the predictions,
the logic and the different scenarios people are painting,
we could definitely get a much better understanding of
what the future could hold for XRP at least.
So let's start with the basics. What's the current situation with XRP?
Okay, so according to these articles, XRP was trading somewhere between...
like $197 and $14.
Yeah, right around there, give or take a few cents.
Normal crypto fluctuations, you know how it goes.
Up a little, down a little over the past 24 hours.
Now, the total market cap was pretty significant.
Yeah, between $115 and $122 billion.
About 57 to 58 billion XRP tokens out there in circulation.
Yeah, a decent chunk of change for sure.
Now, just a quick reminder for anyone who's maybe not super familiar with XRP.
It's the native token of the XRP ledger.
Think of it like this. The XRP ledger is a digital highway.
A super efficient one built by Ripple Labs.
It's all about making cross-border payments super fast and cheap.
Way cheaper than traditional methods.
And XRP itself has a few different roles within that system.
It's used for governance, for security.
For paying transaction fees, those tiny little fees.
Like gas fees on other networks.
And there's even the possibility of earning rewards with it.
Now, one interesting thing one of the articles mentioned.
Yeah, what was that?
That the XRP ledger uses proof-of-stake POS.
You know where people stake their coins to validate transactions?
Yeah.
But then another article pointed out something else.
Oh, yeah, that XRP is actually pre-mined.
Meaning all the coins that will ever exist were created at the beginning.
So it doesn't use that energy-intensive mining process you hear about.
Like Bitcoin, for example.
Yeah, totally different model there.
And looking at the past is always helpful.
Definitely gives you some context.
XRP's had some wild price swings over the years.
Huge highs and some pretty dramatic lows, too.
The all-time high was 384 back in January 2018.
During that big crypto boom, remember that?
Everyone and their grandma was buying Bitcoin.
Crazy times.
And the all-time low was just a tiny fraction of a cent.
Yeah, 0.002802 back in July of 2014.
Wow, what a ride it's been.
For sure. And you can't talk about XRP without talking about...
the SEC lawsuit.
The elephant in the room.
Right, it's been a major factor hanging over everything.
Our sources highlighted some important developments, though.
Like what's happened recently?
Well, the lawsuits against Ripple's executives, those were actually dismissed last October. Big win for them.
That must have been a relief.
And before that, in July 2023.
There was that big ruling about whether XRP is a security or not.
Right. The court said it is a security when Ripple sells it to institutions.
Like big investors.
Yeah, but not when regular people buy it on an exchange.
So a partial victory for both sides, I guess.
Kind of depends who you ask, right?
But it's not over yet, is it?
No, not by a long shot. The remedies phase is still going on.
And there's talk about how Gary Gensler leaving the SEC might affect things.
Yeah, could throw a whole new wrench in the works.
So this legal battle, it's definitely had a huge impact on how the market views XRP.
And probably will continue to do so for a while.
Okay, so enough about the past and present. Let's get to the exciting part.
The predictions.
The crystal ball gazing.
Let's see what those numbers look like for 2025 first.
Okay, so next year, what are the experts saying?
Well, it's a mixed bag, as you might expect.
Give us the rundown.
CoinStats, for example, they're pretty optimistic.
Bullish, you mean?
Yeah, they see a range of 344 to 559.
But they also have a bearish prediction, right?
Oh yeah, way down at 123, so they're covering their basis.
Okay, what about Coinpedia?
They're a bit more conservative. Their low is 230.
And they're high.
581 with an average around 489.
Okay, so still some decent potential upside there. What about Investing Haven?
They give us 182 to 441 as their main range.
But they also have a stretched target.
Yeah, they think 515 is possible too, and their average is 295.
Interesting, so a bit more spread out there.
Yeah, and FlipPay is super bullish for 2025.
They're always optimistic, aren't they?
Pretty much, they think XRP could go anywhere from $5 to $15.
Wow, that's a big jump.
And Oliver Dale's analysis points to a peak around 429 in March.
Okay, so a lot of different opinions there, as always.
That's crypto for you. Never a dull moment.
So what are these predictions based on? Are they just pulling numbers out of a hat?
Well, some of it comes from looking at the chart's past price movements.
Technical analysis.
Exactly.
What kind of patterns are they seeing?
Well, CoinStats mentions something called a horizontal channel pattern.
Okay, so what does that even mean?
Think of it like the price bouncing between two parallel lines.
So like it's stuck in a range for now.
Yeah, consolidating, not making any big moves up or down. They say there are resistance levels at 256, 341, and 620.
Resistance meaning the price might struggle to break through those points.
Exactly, and they see support at 189.
Support being a level where the price might bounce back up.
Right, because buyers might step in at that point.
That makes sense. What else did they look at?
They talked about RVOL relative volume.
Okay, and what's that telling us?
It's weak right now, meaning there's not a ton of trading activity.
So people aren't super excited about XRP at the moment?
Not really any strong conviction in either direction, it seems.
Okay, so kind of a waiting game?
Maybe waiting for a catalyst,
Yeah.
something to shake things up.
So low trading enthusiasm for... No, what else did CoinStats mention?
They looked at moving averages, too.
Okay, and what did those show?
Well, the 50-day moving average is above the current price.
Which usually means...
It's a bullish sign, could point to an upward trend.
But
the current price is still below that average.
So it's a little bit mixed.
Yeah, like maybe the short-term trend was up, but there's been a pullback.
Okay, still a bit of uncertainty there.
And then they also mentioned the Relative Strength Index, RSI.
RSI. Okay, what's that all about?
They said it's getting close to being oversold.
Oversold. What does that mean?
Think of it like stretching a rubber band too far. Eventually it'll snap back.
Okay, I see.
So an oversold RSI can mean the price has fallen too quickly and might rebound.
So it could be a good buying opportunity.
Maybe some people think so.
Interesting analogy with the rubber band.
Helps to visualize it, right?
Definitely. Okay, so they also mentioned ADX and RVI, right?
Yeah, those are two other indicators.
And what are those telling us?
Well, the ADX average directional index is showing weak trend momentum.
Meaning
The price is moving a little, but there's no strong sustained push either way.
so no clear direction for now.
And the RVI relative volatility index suggests XRP is pretty stable right now.
Not a lot of price swings.
No, not really.
So overall, CoinStats technical analysis is painting picture of
Consolidation, not a lot of strong conviction, and maybe a setup for a move if something big happens.
Okay, so that's a lot of chart talk.
Yeah.
What about the other sources are they?
Are they backing up those technical insights or
Or are they focused on different things?
Well, Investing Haven, for example, they bring in a lot of expert opinions.
like actual people saying what they think?
Yeah, like Ed Greg Crypto, he's super bullish.
How bullish are we talking?
He thinks XRP could hit $17.
$17, wow.
But he says that depends on XRP breaking through that 340 resistance level we talked about.
Okay, so a big if there.
Definitely. And then there's Ollie Martinez. He sees a cup and handle pattern.
Another one of those chart patterns.
Yeah, and that one often suggests a bullish breakout.
So he thinks the price is going to go up too.
He's predicting around 335.
Okay. A bit more reasonable than $17.
Maybe, but who knows?
True, anything is possible in crypto.
Right, and Arthur Azizov, he's forecasting $5 to $7 in the first half of 2025.
Okay, and what's his reasoning?
He's really focused on the regulatory developments.
So that SEC case is a big factor for him.
Absolutely, and then Ryan Lee, he gives a wider range.
What's he saying?
180 to 840 for 2025.
Okay, that's a pretty big spread.
He's taking into account both adoption and regulation.
So how many people are actually using XRP and what the government does?
Exactly, and he even thinks there could be spikes above $10 in some scenarios.
Wow, so some real potential upside there.
Yeah, if things go well. And then Taki Saklanos, he thinks,
What's his take?
once XRP stays above 332 consistently,
That's another one of those key levels.
yeah, he thinks we could see some explosive price action.
Okay, so lots of different opinions, but a general sense of...
Optimism, I'd say, at least from those analysts.
But Investing Haven also talked about something else.
They said it's important to look at the XRP BTC trading pair,
Meaning?
how much Bitcoin it takes to buy one XRP.
So it's not just about the dollar value.
Right, it's about how XRP is performing compared to the king.
Bitcoin, the OG crypto.
Exactly.
That's a good point for understanding relative strength.
Definitely. And FlipPay, they brought up the idea of XRP getting relisted on exchanges.
Oh, yeah, because a bunch of them delisted it after the SEC lawsuit started.
Right, so their thinking is, if the lawsuit ends favorably for Ripple...
Those exchanges might start listing XRP again.
Exactly, and that could lead to more buying and selling.
More liquidity.
Which could push the price up.
Makes sense. They also mentioned something about the Bitcoin halving.
Yeah, they think the overall market mood after that could be bullish.
Historically, halvings have been followed by good times for crypto.
Often, but not always, of course.
True. But it's something to keep in mind.
Definitely. And Coinpedia, they highlighted some of the real-world stuff Ripple's doing.
Yeah, like actual adoption of their technology.
Right. They talked about Ripple's stablecoin RLUSD.
Okay, and what's that all about?
It's part of their cross-border payments network, Ripple Payments.
So they're trying to make it easier to send money around the world.
Exactly. And Coinpedia also mentioned Ripple getting approval from
who?
The Dubai Financial Services Authority.
Okay, and what does that mean?
It means they can offer regulated crypto payment services in Dubai.
So that's a big win for them.
Definitely shows they're being taken seriously by regulators.
And that kind of legitimacy can really boost a cryptocurrency.
For sure. Coinpedia also noticed something interesting.
What's that?
More XRP is being moved off of exchanges than onto them.
So people are holding on to their XRP?
Yeah, maybe they're expecting the price to go up and don't want to sell.
So a bullish signal, perhaps?
Could be, but it's not a guarantee.
Of course not.
And then we have 3 commas.
They're the ones who often compile predictions from other sources, right?
Exactly. They look at sites like Light Finance, Trading Beasts, Wallet Investor.
And what are those predictions saying?
Well, for the end of 2025, they're often below the current price.
Really? So not everyone is so optimistic.
Nope. Some analysts are more cautious about XRP's short-term potential.
Okay, so it's not a slam dunk by any means.
Not at all. There's definitely a range of opinions out there.
Which is good to see, honestly.
Shows that people are thinking critically about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's 2025. What about the longer term?
2026 all the way to 2030.
Does it get any easier to predict that far out?
You know what they say about the fog of war?
Yeah, the further you look, the thicker it gets.
Same with crypto predictions, I'd say.
So what are we looking at for those later years?
Well, the forecasts tend to spread out even more.
Which makes sense. The further out you go, the more uncertainty there is.
Exactly. So for 2026, CoinStats gives us a really wide range.
How wide are we talking?
From $12.50 on the high end to 70 cents on the low end.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, pretty much covers all the bases.
What about Coinpedia?
They're a bit tighter, 560 to 864.
Okay, still a decent spread, but not as crazy as CoinStats.
And Investing Haven says 220 to 644.
Okay, and FlipPay.
Still bullish, of course, $12 to $20 for 2026.
So they're sticking to their gun.
Seems like it. And 3 commas provides monthly predictions that hover around.
Around what?
190 to 216 for most of 2026.
Okay, so some are expecting more gradual growth.
Yeah. Definitely not everyone is predicting those huge price jumps.
What are some of the big drivers that could be influencing XRP's price in those later years?
Well, Coinpedia thinks Ripple's involvement in CBDCs could be huge.
CBDCs, you mean central bank digital currencies?
Exactly. Those are digital versions of government-backed money.
So basically, countries creating their own cryptocurrencies.
Kind of, yeah. And they think Ripple could play a big role in that.
Interesting. And what else?
They also see XRP becoming more dominant in international payments.
So more and more people using it to send money across borders.
Right, and they mentioned more real-world uses, new dApps being built on XRP.
dApps, those are decentralized applications.
Right, like apps that run on the blockchain.
So basically expanding what XRP can do.
Exactly, and they think there could be some big announcements from Ripple.
Partnerships, maybe?
Possibly. And they also emphasize the importance of wider adoption.
By regular people and businesses.
Yeah, and by traditional financial players, too.
So basically, the more people using XRP, the better for the price.
That's the general idea.
Makes sense. What about FlipPay? Do they have any thoughts about those later years?
They did. They brought up a good point about what might happen.
Yeah.
if we see that big price jump in 2025.
Like some people are predicting.
Yeah, they think there could be a correction in 2026.
A correction meaning,
The price could drop as some investors take their profits and sell.
so a bit of a reality check after the hype.
Yeah, could happen, but not necessarily.
Of course. And what about Investing Haven? Are they still bullish long-term?
They are. They still see that long-term bullish triangle pattern.
On the charts.
Yeah, which they think supports a positive outlook.
Okay, so they're sticking to their guns as well.
It seems so. And 3 commas, they do have some forecasts that go all the way to the 2030s.
Wow, that's getting really far out there.
It is, but their shorter-term predictions tend to be more grounded.
Okay, so they're not quite as optimistic about the immediate future?
Not really, but they do see some potential for growth in the very long term.
Okay, so we've heard a range of predictions,
And
but
some of them were pretty ambitious.
remind us of some of those really eye-catching price targets.
Okay, so CoinStats, they think XRP might hit $10 relatively soon.
That's a popular target, seems like.
And FlipPay, they're even more bullish.
What are they saying?
They think $10 is possible by the end of 2025.
Wow, that would be a huge jump from where we are now.
Huge in investing havens. They're also big believers in XRP.
What's their long-term target?
$9 before 2027.
Okay, so they're a bit more conservative, but still very optimistic.
Yeah, and they even think $10 to $20 is possible by 2030.
Now, that would be something.
It would, but remember, not everyone agrees.
Yeah, we talked about those more cautious analysts.
Yeah, especially the ones whose predictions are compiled by 3 commas.
They think the price could even be lower than it is now in the next few years.
It's definitely not a guaranteed path to riches.
No, definitely not.
Investing in crypto always carries risk.
Okay, so we've talked about 2025, 2026 to 2030.
What about even further out?
Yeah. What about those super long-term predictions, 2040, 2050?
Now we're really getting into the realm of speculation.
But FlipPay did give us some numbers for those years.
They said $71 to $82 for 2040.
And for 2050?
$127 to $150.
Wow, those are some big numbers.
They are, but those predictions are based on a few big assumptions.
Like what?
Well, they're assuming the entire crypto market will keep growing significantly.
Yeah. Over the next few decades.
Yeah, and that XRP's limited supply will become a bigger factor.
So basically scarcity driving up the price.
Exactly. But it's super important to remember how speculative those forecasts are.
I mean, who knows what the world will look like in 20 or 30 years?
Right, technology changes so fast those predictions could be way off.
Definitely, so take them with a grain of salt.
A big one.
Okay, now our sources did talk about some specific price milestones.
Yeah, those round numbers that people always want to know about.
Like, will XRP reach $3, $5, $10, $20, even $100?
Right, everyone wants to know when Lambo.
So what did the experts say?
Well, for those lower targets like $3 and $5,
Yeah.
there's cautious optimism that those could be reached in the near to midterm.
Especially if
the SEC case goes well for Ripple and adoption keeps growing.
Okay, what about $10?
A lot of sources see that as possible, maybe even soon in a bullish market.
But it would require some things to go right.
Definitely continued positive momentum and progress from Ripple.
Okay, and $20.
That's seen as more of a long-term goal.
And it would require even bigger changes.
Yeah.
Okay, and $100.
That's the pie-in-the-sky scenario.
Like a long shot.
Most analysts think it would require a massive shift in the global financial system.
And unprecedented levels of XRP usage. So basically a long, long way off.
Pretty much.
Okay, now one last thing before we wrap up.
That analysis from Oliver Dale?
Yeah, he compared XRP to a newer project called Dawgz AI.
It was an interesting way to look at different investment opportunities.
So what was the point of that comparison?
Well, he basically said XRP is more established.
It's been around for a while.
It's got that focus on payments, institutional backing.
And potential for growth, especially after the recent legal wins.
And then you have Dawgz AI,
which is
a brand new meme coin with some AI features.
Okay, and what's the difference?
Well, XRP is less risky, but maybe has less upside potential.
And Dawgz AI.
It's much riskier because it's so new, but it could also have much higher returns.
Or it could crash and burn.
Exactly. It's a higher risk, higher reward situation.
So two very different investment profiles.
For sure depends what kind of investor you are.
Okay, so that gives us a pretty comprehensive look at the XRP price predictions.
We covered a lot of ground today.
From the technical charts to the broader market trends to those specific price milestones.
We looked at it all.
And it's clear that there are a lot of factors at play here.
Regulatory developments, market sentiment, Ripple's own progress.
It's all connected.
And it's important to remember that predicting the future is impossible.
No one has a crystal ball.
So you should always do your own research
And
and
consider your own risk tolerance before making any investment decision.
absolutely, don't just blindly follow what anyone says.
Okay, so before we go,
Mm,
what were some of the aha moments for you today?
the things that really stood out.
Yeah, what surprised you or made you think differently about XRP?
Well, for me, it was the nuance of the SEC ruling.
Yeah, how it treats institutional sales differently from public sales.
That's so important for understanding the exchange listings and market sentiment.
Definitely a key takeaway.
And I was also surprised by how different the interpretations of those technical indicators can be.
Leading to such a wide range of price predictions.
Shows how much subjectivity there is in technical analysis.
Absolutely.
And finally, the contrast between those cautious, long-term forecasts and the super optimistic ones.
That really highlights the speculative nature of predicting crypto prices.
It's a wild ride.
What about you? What were your aha moments?
Well, for me, it was how much those price predictions rely on things outside of the technology itself.
You mean like regulation and market sentiment?
Yeah, those factors seem to be just as important as the tech itself.
If not more so.
Maybe even more so.
Okay, so for you listening at home, think about this.
What factors resonated most with you when you consider XRP's potential?
Which predictions seem most plausible to you and why?
And what other areas might you want to research based on what we talked about today?
And finally, here's a question to ponder.
Given all the uncertainty and the constantly changing crypto landscape,
How might XRP's actual purpose?
its utility in making cross-border payments faster and cheaper,
How might that ultimately determine its long-term value?
maybe even more than those short-term price fluctuations.
Something to think about. Okay, that's it for this deep dive into XRP.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.